Hi, I'm Micah from Shinebright Career Coaching. I am a co-founder and have been a career coach for over 10 years. And so we've built this channel to help our community gain more insights and valuable ways to show up in your career. And today I would like to talk to all of you parents out there who are juggling both a career and a full-time job and family life. Kudos to you. I know it's not an easy struggle, and a lot of us are feeling really exhausted and overwhelmed. And that's why I wanted to chat with you today to share some tips and some insights about how to combat that exhaustion and overwhelm. I myself have 2 daughters, and my husband works full-time, and we do have help, but we are also balancing a lot. And it feels really, really exhausting, and it feels even more exhausting than prior to the pandemic. And that's something I'm hearing from a lot of my clients. So I wanted to just kind of normalize that for you. It's something that so many people are feeling. We're getting back into routines, and many of them are new for us. Kids are in different schools, they're in different levels at school, and they might have some kind of learning setbacks from the pandemic and the lost time. We also might be showing up in our jobs in different arenas. I myself now work from home. A lot of us are going back to the office, and a lot of us are maybe doing a hybrid. And so it's just this huge period of transition where the foundation feels really wobbly in a lot of different ways. So right now, I want you to just take a deep breath and exhale and think about the fact that you can show up differently. You can be more intentional to feel less exhausted. So, number one, we're doing a lot of scheduling, right? So we're scheduling at work. We have meetings coming at us all the time. We have Slacks and we have text messages coming at us. And we also probably have to download a new app for every sporting activity our kids, in, and we have to respond to all of these different threads of communication. One thing I'd love for you to think about doing is how can you consolidate it? Right? So we talk about setting up boundaries a lot at work and trying to shut off our work life, at 6 o'clock or not answer texts after 6 o'clock. This is true of parenting as well. If you're at work and you're in work mode, I would really encourage you to turn off any notifications from any apps that are related to kids. I would encourage you to not answer emails about scheduling things or going to class meetings or any kind of communications with your kids' teachers during your work hours. So just like we ask our kids to turn their phones off during their school hours and focus on their job, I'm asking that of you as well. So that creates a boundary, and that creates also a way for you to show up and be completely involved with your work. You don't have things pinging in, distracting you, and pulling you out. And scheduling is a really complicated thing. So if you allow those messages to come in and you're thinking about what am I going to do on Saturday or who's going to pick up, River, my son, on Tuesday, then all of a sudden things get scrambled. So again, turning off those notifications, committing to during working hours, not doing the planning and the scheduling of your family life if possible. That's a way to really not overwhelm your brain. And then the flip, you knew I was going there, right? So the flip is true too. The thing is if we are with our family and we are answering Slacks and we are paying attention to whatever emails are coming on, we're being pulled away from the family. And the children are the first ones to notice that, right? Your kids are like, Mom, you're on your phone, get off your phone. Well, they're right. But also you're really scrambling that brain in the same way that you might be doing it at work with the family emails. So if you separate and choose and commit to focusing on whatever role you're in that moment, you're creating a way to connect more deeply with your kids, be more focused, and also to really understand that we have to focus our energies in order to really get anything meaningful back. So if we're pulled here and we're pulled here and we're pulled here, then we're not showing up anywhere 100%. And I think that this is where a lot of us are feeling so exhausted, is during the pandemic, we may have been home with our families, we may have been in different roles, but we actually were given some time, if we were lucky and fortunate, to be more focused or to spend more family time together. And so all of a sudden, boom, we're back into this busy life, and it's hard to remember that you have boundaries that you have control of. So number one tip is to separate the communications between your work life and your family life in a really intentional way. The second tip is to actually create a working parent community. That totally sounds overwhelming when I just say it that way, but let me talk to you about what kind of the data shows us is that parenting and mothering is very, very lonely. We have our kids, we are devoted to them, we have our jobs, we are devoted to those jobs, and we don't have time to maybe go to happy hour at 6 o'clock, or we don't have time to maybe grab dinner with a colleague where we would really form those relationships. We're, out the door to grab the kids and into the busy afternoon life or evening life of a working mom or dad as soon as we leave the office, or even, as in my case, I come out of my office in my house, right? There's just a really fast change. And so our communities look really different in both places. Our community at work is different than that of someone who's a single person, and our communities within our kids' parenting communities, other classmates and such, where there might be a stay-at-home mom or someone, we're not showing up in that community very regularly either and being able to build ties there very easily. But we can do this intentionally, and that's kind of the whole theme of my talk today, is that if we really are thoughtful and think about it, we can do many, many things different, and we can do many things even better. So intentionally understanding that we're forming relationships in different ways, and then valuing and honoring those communities. So if within your work life you are not able to socialize or create connections with the people you work with in kind of an organic, like, hey, let's go grab a drink after work way, then be intentional about it. If there's someone you feel connected to or somebody you really like in your office, then make time to grab lunch. Say, hey, next week, Thursday at noon, I don't have a meeting, I'm going to block it off. Can we go grab coffee? Can we grab lunch? Make sure that you're doing that diligently and forming those connections and finding that kind of work best friend so that you have community in your work life. And then the same is true of being a working parent and finding community there. So you have to be intentional about it, and you don't have to spend hours in every committee and showing up and being this overachieving parent that's involved in everything at the school. But you can pick and choose a few things that you might be able to work into your schedule to volunteer at the school. Many schools have things that are like once a month you can show up, or you can help organize an event that happens annually, so it's not all the time. And within those communities or that intentional place to volunteer a little bit of time, you actually will get a better sense of what's going on in your kid's school, and you will probably meet some of those maybe stay-at-home parents that are able to volunteer more often, and you'll be able to feel connected to the school in an authentic way that's a little bit different and a little bit deeper than when we are only able to just drop off our kids and pick up our kids. Or maybe our kids go to after school program and we're not doing the pickup, or we have a nanny doing that as well. So this is a way to feel a little more grounded at the school and to see what's happening at the school and get a flavor for that. Okay, it helps us to connect with our kids a little bit better, but it also does something for us when we see that there's maybe another working parent in there, and we know who that person is, and then we can say hi to them at drop-off and pick-up. Sounds very, very small, but it's about community, and we as humans, we need community. We have lived in community, and before we lived in houses and had cities, this is something that is a part of being human. And when we're siloing ourselves in that space of rushing between work and home and not forging any kind of connection, no matter how small they are, to the adults around us or to the environments around us, it feels really, really lonely. and it feels like you're kind of straddling two different worlds and that you don't fit in anywhere. And I think that's where a lot of the overwhelm comes from. So doing that intentionally, and then kind of the second part of the intentional connecting with other parents is I do think it's important to find some other working moms or some other working dads, depending on who you are, that you regularly are checking in with and chatting with. It could be a neighbor or just somebody in your world that you like and that is doing the same dance that you are. Because it's very hard to understand from the outside. And so if your best friend is at a different stage in life than you, they have a different understanding of what's going on. But another working mom who is also trying to, manage the schedules, give good nutrition to their kids, show up at work in a, high pressure arena that's different than family life, that person can relate to you and empathize maybe on a different level. And what the research really shows us is that type of connection and that type of community feels really important to working parents, but working moms specifically. So find that person that you can be intentional with and maybe share the reason why that you're asking them to grab coffee or a glass of wine, or start a text chain where you're like, oh my God, I had a terrible day at work, and you can kind of commiserate or celebrate, I had a great day at work in the same way with that person who's going through a lot of the same things as you. So the third tip is if you are married or if you have a partner in your life, talk to them about how you're feeling. Talk to them about how you're feeling stretched and how you're feeling pulled, and see if they're feeling the same way. And of course, this is different than building community with another working parent, because you're in a relationship and, that person is maybe feeling a little stressed too in the same ways. Your spouse might be feeling stressed in the same ways. But if you talk about it and keep that communication open between the two of you, then you can also feel more connected within your marriage or your relationship. And that shows up really, really positively in your family. And so if you haven't noticed, a lot of what I'm sharing with you today is kind of logical, and it's about communication, but it's about being intentional, and it's about making sure you're showing up and feeling like you are connected to the people around you. So that's the next tip. The fourth tip is making time to melt with your children. It sounds so weird, but when we're running this way and that way, and we are worried about schedules and pickups and different activities and grades and whether or not, somebody brushed their teeth this morning, we're actually just in go mode. And we're telling people what to do. We're telling the kids what to do. We're trying to encourage them. We're trying to show up as a positive role model and get all of our things done too. And there's, again, very little time for connection. We just kind of go, 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 go. And we sometimes forget things like giving a hug. Or maybe even just saying, hey, can I read to you tonight? If your kids are turning 7 and 8 and 9, maybe that reading time when they were little is now becoming their own reading time. And so if you can actually say, hey, can I, spend some time reading with you? Or if you have a child that likes playing video games, even sitting down and saying, hey, can I play some video games with you? This term, this melting with your kids term, is something that was said to me years ago. And I think it's so, it just felt so obvious to me. Like when I cuddle my kids, when I'm able to slow down, when we're able to do an activity together, even if it's just them helping me to dice the vegetables during dinner, that togetherness actually makes my heart melt, right? And in that space, we feel more connected to them. And that's actually what we need so much in our lives, is we need to remember who we're doing this mad dance for. We need to remember what it's all for. And when we're moving so fast, and when the texts are coming in, and when we aren't setting up boundaries or being intentional with our time, and our 7-year-old has a meltdown, or our 2-year-old, is getting potty trained and not having an easy time of it, we sometimes begin to feel resentful. And we sometimes begin to show up with less patience than we would have liked to show up with. And this is quite simply because our bodies are just being inundated. Our minds are being inundated. We're not really giving ourselves the time to slow down and to connect in the way we want. So melt with your kids, find the ways that they like to do that. I have noticed that if I make a suggestion, my kids don't want to do that. So I have to ask them what they want to do. And, even just that hug with the teenager on the way out the door, asking, can I give you a hug before you go? You'll be really surprised that often that kid that you think doesn't want a hug from their mom or dad, that actually is something they'll be like, yeah, okay, great. Give me a hug. I gotta go, right? But that's an opportunity for connection and an opportunity to melt with your kids. So those are a couple tips. And, another one I'd like to share with you is obvious, and people talk about this all the time, but what are the practices that give you energy and joy? And how do you hold on to them when you're busy? Is it meditation? Is it yoga? Is it exercise? Is it playing tennis? What is it that you do that stimulates you in a way that helps you connect with yourself? And so that part is kind of about community too, right? It's about community with yourself. So you have the work you have the parent you have the person that's in the relationship, if you are in one, and then you have all the other things coming at you. So making space for yourself and setting up, a habit is always the best way to do this. If your household gets up at 7 and you're able to get up at 6 and do your meditation or your yoga or stretching, go for a walk. Those are ways to build it in that can be repeated every day, and that makes it a little easier. But if you're someone like me who every day is looking different, I just try to build one thing into my day that is mine. And that is often going for a walk and listening to a podcast. I try to meditate in the morning and listen to a guided meditation every morning, because that's only 5 to 15 minutes, depending on what I'm into that day. But for me, it's very random. But I have it on my schedule, like, hey, today I need to go for a walk, fit it in. Hey, today I need to do a Peloton, fit it in. And I can move it around. That's just where my strength is. I like to be flexible. I like to feel like I can have some different days, but my husband's very different. He's very rigid. He likes to have his disciplined workout time built into his schedule at the regular time. And that's his time, right? And we've talked about how we need to, as parents, make sure that we're both doing that for each other and giving each other that time too. So life is different now than before the pandemic, but we are returning to this busy world with all of these different things coming at us. And it's really, really imperative for us to be intentional about how we not only, survive this chaotic time of parenting, but actually are able to thrive and actually are able to show up for our kids and our families in the ways that we want to, in the ways we intended to, and also to show up in the ways that we want to at work, where we have energy and the ability to focus. So setting those boundaries, being intentional, thinking about work happening here and family life happening here, doing the scheduling separately, building community in those different places, even as simply as you can, so it doesn't feel overwhelming. Talking to other working parents, finding out who they are and how they're feeling, talking to your spouse and being honest and open about how you're feeling, and honoring your time that you need to spend with yourself, and honoring that ability to melt with your kids in small moments so that you feel more connected, and you can make sure that those resentments that we come to naturally when we're exhausted don't build up. That's the big thing. It's being proactive. It's the same thing as eating your greens, right? Before we get sick, we want to take vitamins and eat well and be proactive about our health. And this is the same thing about being a parent and working full time. It's about being proactive and intentional. I hope some of these tips helped. please let me know. Leave a comment, share any insights or thoughts, or I'm sure there are a lot of other ways to do this. So please let me know the best practices that you have found successful. I want to hear. I want to know, and it's a great place to share. So thank you for tuning in, and please subscribe to this channel if you find these tips and insights helpful. It's really nice to have been chatting with you, and see you next time.